Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest on the extremely cold weather that is arriving next week. Now we've got very cold easterly winds at the moment, something that is turning us below average, but nothing ridiculously cold. But come Wednesday, Thursday next week, depending on your position in the country, we will see bitterly cold Arctic air flooding in from the north. It's likely to be accompanied by quite a few wintry showers as well, and there's potential as we move beyond that to see low pressure systems bump into that, and that could produce significant snowfall in some areas. And of course we could see significant snowfall in northern and eastern areas from little systems, convergent zones, and of course our traditional convection from sort of lake effect snowfall coming off the North Sea. So we're in for a very wintry next couple of weeks and very cold as well. We're not really going to be much above average for at least the next 10 to 14 days, with the potential for the end of next working week into the weekend to be seeing temperatures hardly above freezing quite widely. Ice days are looking more and more likely, especially in the north, but you can't rule it out in the south. So we'll be updating that on the longer range today, and also have a look at the UKV as that is now just about getting into the middle of next week, so you can start to see that flood of Arctic air come in and the first wintry showers starting to push in from the north. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now if you start on the live radar, you can see not too much is going on, but there is a few showers in the north, and that's because the weather front is pushing in off the Atlantic, but it's sort of petering out now up against the higher pressure. And you can see some showers across East Anglia and the far southeast, and that's because we've got an easterly wind pushing in. You can see very cold airs across parts of Europe, across Germany, and Poland, and this air is heading our way. It could produce some wintriness over the higher ground, but it's not that cold, with it originating more from southeast Europe than northeast Europe and Scandinavia, where it would produce snow if it came our way. So it just means temperatures are going to be below average, probably around 4 to 6 degree highs over the course of this weekend into early next week, and a few wintry showers over the higher ground elsewhere, just cold rain and quite miserable, chilly conditions. But the feel-like temperature out there, the wind chill, will make it feel most likely towards freezing over the course of the next few days. So yeah, thermometer temperatures won't be that cold with a lot of cloud around. The overnight temperatures won't drop down too much, but it will feel really cold out there. But the real weather, the real cold weather, is coming next week, as I said. Now, if you put in the temperatures around 1 p.m. this afternoon, you can see it is widely quite chilly in the west, where we've got some persistent fog. We did see a yellow warning for fog issued there. Again, we see these warnings issued very late at night, and they expire at around 11 a.m, so we don't normally actually fit them into our videos. But thick fog there, and that's holding those temperatures down towards the low single digits, if not towards freezing. Further east, you can see slightly milder conditions, but still a lot of blues mixing in, so temperatures towards the mid to low single digits, and that's just going to be falling over the course of the next couple of days, and the wind chill, as I said, will make it feel a lot colder. You can see where the air is coming from. Look at Germany and Poland. It is getting towards freezing there. Of course, it'll get moderated a bit as it heads across the North Sea, especially towards the surface. Dew points are likely to be slightly above freezing, so that's why wintry precipitation will be exclusively over higher ground, maybe a bit of evaporative cooling to low areas at times, and we'll check the UKV in a minute to see what the chance of that, but it will just be feeling really quite cold really in general. So if we do now go over to the UKV run and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, now you can see this afternoon a few showers starting to push into the southeast, and that is convection within that very cold air mass that is pushing in. Again, we do see a few showers, but mostly of rain, and you could see a little bit of pinks going in there over the high ground of Scotland and northern England, and maybe in Wales as well, where showers carry through. It does look like northeast England perhaps is the area that will see the most amount of precipitation from this. But again, we're expecting most of it to be rain, snow over the highest ground. As we head beyond that, those showers will eventually start to peter out in the south as that wind gets cut off. We do see slightly milder air push in there for a time early next week, but wait until Tuesday and Wednesday. Look at the wind veering in from the north, and look at showers starting to pile in by Tuesday afternoon and evening. Initially rain, but eventually come Wednesday, all of it is turning to snow inland. Again, at early Wednesday, where the coldest airs will only really reach the north of the British Isles. Snow for Scotland, Northern Ireland and North East England and parts of North Wales. And look at all of these shower clouds packing in, and you'd expect northern and eastern areas, especially close to the coast, will be seeing a lot of precipitation and a lot of snow. And the reason for this is, look at the pressure charts, a direct northerly wind, bitterly cold air running in as well. If we loop on the upper air temperatures and run it back, you can see over the course of today we're seeing sort of the -5 isotherm starting to push in, so cold enough to support snow at 850 HPA, but other areas of the atmosphere not quite conducive for snow, like the dew point and the surface conditions in general. So that's why, yes, it's a cold feel out there, but it's not bitterly cold yet. We stay in that generally cold air mass all the way through Saturday and Sunday, and as we head into early next week, we do see some slightly milder air push up from the south. It will increase those temperatures ever so slightly, maybe towards the mid to high single digits, before getting pushed away by Monday. And look at Tuesday, the wind direction all coming in from the north, and look by Tuesday evening into Wednesday, bitterly cold air flooding in the -7, -8 degrees, potentially even -10 degrees, getting into parts of Scotland through Wednesday and Thursday. So yeah, turning extremely cold next week. If you put on the max temperatures from this, you can see today temperatures peaking in many areas around that 6 or 7 degree mark, maybe only 3 or 4 degrees under the fog in the west. Overnight tonight, those temperatures will not drop down too much. Some areas having almost a 0 degree diurnal range, where the temperature overnight doesn't drop below the daytime temperature max at all. A few areas could see a frost, but the cloud is holding those temperatures up. By tomorrow afternoon, we see those temperatures once again, maybe 5 to 7 degrees, colder in the north. Again, the wind chill will make it feel a lot chillier than that. Further west, towards freezing, where we escape the cloud, and by Sunday afternoon, again, look at that, 3 to 5 degrees, really quite chilly out there. And again, putting on the feel-like temperature, it's going to feel more towards freezing. As I said, as we head into Monday, overnight temperatures in the north towards freezing, but by Monday afternoon in the south, maybe 7 or 8 degrees, a slightly milder air bumps in, but it's not going to feel too much milder, maybe feeling slightly warmer, but not really anything particularly amazing, still feeling below average. But by Tuesday, the cold air starts to move in, and it's sort of drier air coming in from the Arctic, so it means that there will be less cloud around, and those temperatures will drop lower overnight, so widely across central England, and generally the whole of the British Isles, really, apart from northeast coast, we've still got cloud pushing in and a few showers, widely below freezing, maybe -3 to -5 degrees in the countryside, and by Tuesday in the day, hardly getting above 5 or 6 degrees. And look at the overnight temperatures as we head into Wednesday, widely getting towards freezing, and look across Scotland, northern England, look at that -1 to -3 degrees quite widely. And again, these are sort of towns and cities temperatures. In countrysides, -5 or even -10 degrees could be possible, and this is the start of the cold spell. Given another few days when the cold is embedded in the country, and we'd expect you to be seeing maybe lows of -15 or lower, and as I said, many areas will be unlikely to see temperatures rise much above freezing come later next working week. So a real bitterly cold week, or end of next week coming, but regardless of how cold it gets end of next week, the next 5 days in general, where it's not bitterly cold, it's still going to be really quite chilly out there, and it's going to feel notably like it's winter as we actually do meteorologically start winter. So it's pretty timely that the proper wintry weather is arriving just as we do enter December. And the big thing with this is it does look quite blocked and sustained. It's not just a few days of cold weather. This could be a number of weeks of on and off very cold weather, as we'll see now on the longer range models. So if you start on the GFS, you can see we got higher pressure up towards Scandinavia, pulling in an easterly wind. Now you'd think we just sustain this easterly wind and bring generally chilly conditions, but that is not what happens. The higher pressure retrogresses, moves against the general west-east flow up towards Greenland, and look at this lobe of tropospheric polar vortex exiting out of the Arctic through Svalbard down towards Scandinavia, and we go bitterly cold with northeasterly wind. Again, we are near to higher pressure, but this is not a dry flow at all. All those blues indicating lower heights, lower pressure, a lot of shower activity, and we'd be seeing a lot of snowfall falling in some areas with this. It will be mostly convection based, so it's going to be very hit and miss. Some areas could see 10 inches, other areas could see literally nothing. So it's going to be very difficult to forecast this, and that's why we're not looking at precipitation charts yet. We're going to save that for the next few days once it gets into the high resolution time frame, simply because the mid to longer range models will not have a clue what is going on with the convection. Of course, there could be more persistent bands of snow around, and those will be better modelled, but again, we'll wait and see what happens with that. So you see later next week, we're into a bitterly cold northeasterly flow, low heights, low pressure sat to our south and our east, which means a lot of areas are going to be seeing a lot of showers, and it's such an unsettled flow that I wouldn't be surprised seeing a lot of these showers going quite far inland, even though they'll probably be at their most sort of severe and their highest sort of precipitation level toward the coast. They still could produce snowfall inland, and we just stay extremely cold and unsettled. We do see a little bit of a battleground situation from the GFS here at day 10 as we head towards early next Monday, so in 10 days time. Once we've had very cold air for sort of 3, 4, 5 days, we start to see more of an easterly flow, more stagnant, and this could have slow moving areas of snow and easterly winds. Now you can see a low pressure is running up from the south here. This could produce persistent snow in southern England. Where that low pressure and the milder air bumps into the cold air, it could produce a lot of snowfall there, and that could be bitterly cold with a very strong northeasterly wind. And as we head towards 384 hours, we continue with bitterly cold easterly winds, and eventually, right at the end of the run, we start to see slightly milder air coming from the north. But because it's coming in from the north, from a cold direction, even though at 850 HPA it's slightly milder, it would still produce probably very cold conditions at the surface, because the cold conditions are embedded, having been sat over the top of us for 10 days. Now, of course, anything beyond day 10 here from the GFS is pretty speculative, simply because it is longer range stuff, but this just shows you how we could be locked into sort of a 2-week cold spell at least. And at 384 hours, we're seeing more amplification of the jet stream, higher pressure heading back towards Greenland, and bitterly cold air flooding back into Scandinavia, and it could all repeat. And these are one of these scenarios where you can see weeks on weeks of cold weather, where the atmosphere is just primed for northerly or easterly winds. We haven't seen these sort of conditions in years. You could even say the nearest thing to this is perhaps December 2010. Because of course we've had cold spells. We had cold spell in February 2021. We had the beast from the east in 2018. But these events lasted 5 days or so. This could be lasting 7 to 10 days or even longer. And of course we run it back and have a look at the potential equivalent temperature, which gives us a better understanding of how cold the air is. You can see the air coming in this weekend is blue, but it's not that cold. But wait until next week. The purples and darker blues spread in, and we stay in these darker blues and purples all the way to 384 hours, before eventually it starts to move away. And of course with this, when we get cold air over the top of us for a number of days and a week or 2 weeks, it just means the surface conditions are freezing. The ground will freeze. We'll most likely will see surface conditions stay icy even when air conditions rise above freezing. We're highly likely to see a lot of fog and persistent snowfall, lying snowfall as well, especially in the countryside. So this is one of these. This could be a historic event if this sort of GFS run came off. But at the moment, we only really have a lot of consistency up towards sort of day 7 and day 10. So yes, this GFS run is speculative, but this just shows you how we could be on the cusp of a historic, bitterly cold spell coming in. Something that we see very rarely, every few years or every few decades, really. If we do run over to the GM now and see what that is showing up until day 10, once again, we'll see it is bitterly cold. Easterly winds coming in this week. The high pressure retrogresses up towards Greenland, and we push in a bitterly cold northeasterly wind. It's taking a little bit longer to get that cold air in because we've got higher heights to our south, pulling more of a southeasterly, so it hangs on to the milder air in the south for a time. But as we head towards day 10, it is pulling in bitterly cold air, and that higher pressure actually moved more towards Scandinavia, pulling in more of an easterly flow. And again, low pressure trying to run into it could produce a lot of snow, but this would be an even colder pattern, probably less snowy with more high pressure involved, but it would be even colder with higher pressure over the top of us. Stagnant air, we can see those temperatures dropping to minus double digits in a few areas, or many areas perhaps, depending on the exact flow. So again, GM going very cold, and at day 10 still keeps us within the -5 isotherm. The only exception to this is later next week, Thursday and Friday time, the far south of England is still in the milder air before eventually getting pushed away by Friday, Saturday time. The only thing I'd say with this is that's not what we're seeing on a lot of the ensemble members. This definitely is a milder outlier in terms of ensemble members and of what we've seen recently. So I wouldn't think too much into that at this stage. If we do have a look at the ECMWF, see how that does compare. Again, it's very similar to day 7, but once again, this ECMWF run breaks it down very quickly at day 10 into milder air mass. But as I said, similar to the GM, as we'll have a look at the ensembles in a minute, it is completely a milder outlier compared to what we're seeing. So we do run through easterly winds pushing in. We see the high pressure move towards Greenland, northeasterly winds come in, and then just because of the slight orientation shift in the lower pressure, high pressure, we actually see milder air pushing to the far southeast. This would produce a huge snowfall event for Scotland, but for most of England and Wales, it would produce extremely mild conditions with a southwesterly flow pushing in under the centre of this low. But again, it's not what we're seeing on most of the ensemble members. This is all shifted a few hundred miles further south with this milder air only pushing into southern France on most of the runs. So again, I discount this slightly. The whole sort of atmosphere is still very similar to the other runs and the ensemble members, but just slightly shifted further northwards here from the ECMWF. But as I said, it's not what we're seeing on the ensemble members, so I wouldn't look at this too much. Most runs recently and the ensemble members are all going for a very sustained colder pattern. So if you do compare it to the ensemble members, if we start on the GFS, you can see very cold longer term, about 5 degrees plus below average, all the way until around the 18th of December. So if this does sustain, could we be looking at the potential for a cold and maybe even white Christmas? We'll have to see. But next few days, it's colder than average, 5 degrees colder than average, but pretty dry, high pressure flow. But of course, because of the cloud around and because it's coming from a milder direction than the Arctic, it means that air is slightly moderated towards the surface, so it's not quite as cold. Turns slightly milder towards London early next week, towards Tuesday time, before dropping well away down towards the -5 level at 850 HPA. If not lower than that, that's only where the average is, because we have a few milder outliers. Majority are down to -5 to -10. So really quite cold, and precipitation signal picks up, with most of that falling as snow. And remember, this is the London ensemble member. Further north and in the countryside will be a couple of degrees colder than this at the surface. So yeah, really quite cold. And the big thing with this is it's sustained all the way to the middle of December. Will we see bitterly cold weather maintained all the way into the middle of December? Who knows? It could happen. It could break down after maybe 7 days or so. So we'll have to keep an eye on that in the longer range. But for the time being, we know definitely towards the end of next week, it's going to be turning a lot colder, especially in the north, and then most likely in the south as well. We can have a view of this by having a look at the dew points. You can see again towards freezing, if not well below freezing, in around 5 days' time. So next sort of Wednesday time, again indicating how freezing cold it's getting and where that air is coming from. It's going to be bitterly cold. Again, look at the 2-meter temperatures, dropping down towards sort of the 2 or 3 degree mark. Again, this takes into account milder outliers. You can see the operational run there, the thicker green line, getting highs of 1 or 2 degrees in London. Countryside, further northwards, it's going to be a couple of degrees below that, and that's why I say quite likely we will see ice days come the end of next week. And you can see the operational run here doesn't get us above 5 degrees for about 10 days. So extremely cold and sustained. And if we have a look at the new snow depth spikes, quite a few snow depth spikes appearing now, and you'd expect those to increase as we get nearer the time convection gets modelled better and we start to see more active systems as well. If you do have a look at the ECMWF ensemble members to finish, they are again very cold, slightly milder air next week, but before turning down to that -5 level for the next couple of weeks. Again, a lot of consistency there. A bit of a spike in upper air temperatures perhaps appearing towards the 15th of December point, but that is longer range stuff, and we are still generally below average from the majority. You can see the operational on there being a huge milder outlier, pushing us very mild at the sort of 11th or 12th of December point, and that's why I said discount it, really, because look at all these colder runs we have. So that's why, that ECMWF run is a little bit of an anomaly. It's one of the sort of 3 or 4 milder outliers within 50 ensemble members. So it is, a little bit inaccurate, I'd say, with that compared to what most of the ensemble members and runs are showing. But you can see it's looking very cold, and of course, precipitation is high as well. And if we actually have a look at the 2 meter temperatures, they're even colder than the GFS. Look at that. Majority of ensemble members are at the freezing point. The average is about 1 or 2 degrees, being lifted up by a few of those milder outliers, but it generally is going to be frigid out there. Freezing cold with a lot of snow around, especially towards northern and eastern areas. It's looking likely now we're on the cusp of quite a bitterly cold spell. Could be historic depending on the longevity and how wintry it is out there. But regardless of that, we've got a very cold next 7 days coming up, and potentially a very cold next 2 or 3 weeks, given what we're seeing on the longer range models today. So make sure you do keep an eye on the forecast, keep an eye on the videos, of course, and the Met Office warnings, as I do suspect there'll be many warnings coming up within the next sort of 5 days or so for snow and ice, and probably even fog as well. It's going to be quite dangerous conditions out there for some, especially over the higher ground and in the north and eastern areas where we do see frigid conditions and a lot of snow as well. So yeah, of course, make sure you stay safe out there. It's going to be a tough time, especially with the energy crisis at the moment. So I hope everyone does stay safe. And this is sort of the warning to get prepared for something that could be extremely cold coming later next week. This is something we haven't seen, as I said, in a number of years. The nearest sort of comparison to this time of year and this sort of strength of cold and the longevity we're seeing here is December 2010, where we saw extremely dangerous conditions. Now that was 12 years ago, something a lot of people probably, a lot of younger people probably have forgotten about it, but that was extremely historic, and we could be seeing something along those lines. Again, I wouldn't say the same magnitude, but something similar to that over the course of the next few weeks. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Make sure you stay safe out there over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be really cold, and I'll see you again for another video soon.